Hey there YouTube, it's another horrendously hot day where it's very difficult to concentrate, so that means it's time for another Seacon review, I think. Now, along with Nautilator, this is the only other Seacon I've got that is incomplete, sadly. This is Jawbreaker, and he's missing a couple of lobster-like arms that are supposed to come out here. And it's sad, really, because he is one of the best-looking Seacons in his monster, fish, whatever the hell it's supposed to be mode. It's a sort of shark, I suppose. In fact, like Scalor, he does, to a certain degree, resemble the Sharkticons. And I've always wondered whether they're in the Seacon's portrayal in the now defunct Dreamwave continuity, whether they were going to link them to the Quintessons and the Sharkticons and all those other marine-based aliens out there in the Transformers universe. It certainly seemed like they were going to. There were suggestions in the More Than Meets the Eye source books that the Seacons were probably going to be related to the Quintessons in some way. There was a mention in the Quintesson entry that there is a cadre of bodyguards that the Quintessons have that are rarely seen, and I think it would have turned out to be these guys had the series continued, which sadly it didn't. Yes, it bears more than a striking resemblance to a Sharkticon, particularly when he has his claws on. He looks just like one. And he's quite, like all the Seacons, he looks great. He really looks wonderful in his shark monster, whatever the hell it is, mode. Unlike Scalor, who is actually quite cute and blobby and whatnot, he's very sleek, which suits his character perfectly. He is the most relentless of the Seacons. He is an implacable hunter, and he simply will not stop until his target is terminated. I imagine in that regard he's probably the team leader Snaptrap's favourite of the bunch, because he's no nonsense, very much like Snaptrap himself. Now, interestingly, Overbite in the UK was named Jawbreaker for some reason. I imagine it's because the term Overbite doesn't really mean anything over here. Whereas in America, of course, it serves as something of a pun. Because most people accept his American name now, which is Overbite. He's very cool indeed. And I'll certainly be looking for these two arms here at Auto Assembly later this year. It's a lovely little mode. He does have a wee bit of visible head syndrome there, but it's not terribly obtrusive. In terms of articulation, well, his jaw will go up and down, his legs are pretty well articulated actually. They'll move at the knee and at the feet. And for some reason the colours on this guy seem to work better than most of the other Seacons. They seem to be better proportioned. I think it's the predominance of the purple and the turquoise as opposed to that garish magenta colour he's got going on. It works really well. I do prefer the new Collectors Club version of this guy. The colour scheme on him is just beautiful. He's not necessarily my favourite of the Seacons, to be honest. He's a bit of a simplistic character. He is just a Terminator. There's nothing else to him. He is completely and utterly straight down the line, which is, I suppose, is sort of attractive in many respects, but I do prefer the characters that have a wee bit more ambiguity to them. And the toy's okay, you know. I think I'd probably have more regard for it were it complete. I mean, the lobster claws do seem to balance it out quite beautifully. But even so, not bad at all. Right then, on to his weapon mode. Now, this is apparently designed to be King Poseidon / Piranacon's primary weapon. This is Overbite's Jawbreaker cannon mode, and I have to say I think it's the weakest of all of the Seacon's weapons modes, because it's hardly convincing at all. All it is the shark mode with its head up and the gun on the front. It's pretty lamentable. There's just bits everywhere, legs and the head here. If it had the claws, they'd be coming up here. In fact, if it had the claws, I'd point them forward as sort of tertiary gun barrels. That would probably make it look a wee bit better. But it's most definitely a tacked on tertiary mode that doesn't really mean anything, and should be regarded as such. I don't usually display King Poseidon with this weapon. I usually display him with Nautilator's weapon mode, actually, because it looks so good. Yeah, not really up to much, but wait till you see his robot mode if you think this is bad. I mean, will you just look at the state of that? Even as the Seacons go, this guy's crap. It's just awful. I mean, look at this. Look at that. I mean, the least they could have done is make that perhaps go down as a kind of backpack or something. Make it go... I mean, you can do that with it. In which case it looks a wee bit better. Oh, but only a teensy-weensy bit. It's still a huge fishtail hanging off the back of the robot. It's awful. And also, no distinct legs at all. Just a fused together block with the shark mode head on the bottom. Awful. And very much like Scalar, he suffers from that big arm syndrome. The only difference is that the bulk of his arms comes at the wrist here. Very, very peculiar. And once again, tiny, tiny, tiny Seacon head. I mean, okay, it is actually quite well detailed, the head on Overbite. But, God, you don't want to display them in these modes. You just don't. Their robot modes suck. The best of it is this is not the worst of them. I've saved the worst of them until, not last, because I'm going to do Snaptrap last, because he's the body and he's the best, but certainly the last of the limbs, and that is Seawing. And Seawing is quite possibly one of the worst Transformers you will ever set eyes on.